first case takes us to the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia in the winter of 1959. 9 experienced hikers, led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, set out on a skiing expedition. They were all seasoned mountaineers, students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute. This wasn't their first rodeo. They were supposed to return by February 12th. They never did. When search parties finally reached their last known location on February 26th, what they found didn't make any sense. The tent was still standing, but it had been slashed open from the inside. Not from outside by an animal or attacker, from inside, as if the hikers were desperately trying to escape from something. And here's where it gets disturbing. The hikers had fled into the freezing night wearing almost nothing. No coats. Some had only one shoe. Some were in their underwear, in negative 30 degrees Celsius weather. Why would experienced hikers, people who knew the mountains, who understood hypothermia, run into a blizzard half naked? The search team followed footprints in the snow, leading away from the tent. About a mile down the slope, they found the first 2 bodies near the remains of a fire. They'd tried to start a fire to survive. It wasn't enough. They died from hypothermia, but then they found the others, and nothing made sense anymore. 3 more bodies were found between the fire and the tent, as if they'd tried to make it back but collapsed along the way. But the final 4, they weren't found until May, after the snow melted. These 4 were discovered in a ravine, and their injuries were catastrophic. 1 had massive skull fractures, 2 had severe chest trauma, ribs broken with such force that one medical examiner compared it to the impact of a high-speed car crash. But there were no external wounds, no cuts, no bruises, just internal devastation. And one of them, 20-year-old Lyudmila Dubinina, was missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her lips. The Soviet investigators tested the clothing. Some items showed high levels of radiation. Some of the victims had strange orange tans on their skin, despite dying in winter darkness. The case was closed quickly, too quickly, with the official cause of death listed as unknown compelling force. That was it. No further investigation. But here's what makes this even stranger. In the days before they died, some of the hikers wrote in their journals about feeling watched. Local indigenous people, the Mansi, had warned them not to go to that mountain. The name of the area translates to "don't go there." And on the night they died, witnesses in the area reported seeing strange orange spheres glowing in the sky. So what happened? The theories range from avalanche to military weapons testing to infrasound causing panic. Some believe it was a Soviet parachute mine. Others point to the radiation and mysterious lights, suggesting something else entirely. But here's the thing. None of these theories explain everything. Not the tent slashed from inside, not the missing tongue, not the radiation, not the internal injuries without external wounds, not why they ran into certain death. 9 people fled their tent in terror that night, so afraid of something that freezing to death seemed like the better option. 65 years later, we still don't know what they saw. In January 2013, 21-year-old Elisa, a Canadian student, checked into the Cecil Hotel. She was traveling alone, blogging about her trip, excited to explore California. She was supposed to check out on January 31st and head to Santa Cruz. She never checked out. Days passed. Her family couldn't reach her. Hotel staff had no idea where she was. Elisa had simply vanished. But then guests at the hotel started complaining. The water tasted strange. It was dark. It had an unusual smell. Some said it had a weird texture. People were showering in it, brushing their teeth with it, drinking it. On February 19th, nearly 3 weeks after Elisa disappeared, a maintenance worker climbed to the roof to check the water tanks. He found Elisa's body floating inside one of them. She was naked. Her clothes and belongings were found floating beside her in the tank. The tank's heavy lid had been removed and was found propped open. She'd been in there the entire time. Guests had been using that water for weeks. But here's what makes this case truly unsettling. The last footage of Elisa alive was captured in the hotel elevator, and it's one of the most disturbing pieces of video I've ever seen. She enters the elevator and presses multiple floor buttons. She stands in the corner, then moves to peek out into the hallway. She does this several times, as if she's checking to see if someone is there. Then she steps just outside the elevator. Her body language completely changed. She's gesturing with her hands in bizarre ways, talking or reacting to something we can't see. Her movements become erratic, almost like she's having a conversation with someone who isn't there, or something. And here's the creepiest part. During this entire 4-minute video, the elevator door never closes. It should close automatically, but it just stays open as if something is preventing it from closing. Finally, after she leaves, the door closes and the elevator starts moving on its own, stopping at different floors. So what happened? The questions pile up quickly. How did Elisa get to the roof? It was locked and alarmed. Hotel staff needed a key. The alarm never went off. How did she open the water tank? The lid was extremely heavy, designed to prevent tampering. Opening it alone would be nearly impossible, especially for someone Elisa's size. Why was she naked? Why were her clothes in the water with her? And that elevator footage, what was she reacting to? Was she experiencing a mental health crisis? She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. Toxicology reports showed she hadn't been taking her medication. Or was she seeing something? Running from something? The Cecil Hotel isn't just any hotel. Serial killer Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, stayed there during his murder spree in the 1980s. Another serial killer, Jack Unterweger, stayed there in the 90s. People have jumped from the windows. Others have died under mysterious circumstances. Some call it cursed. Others say it's just a cheap hotel in a rough part of town that attracts tragedy. The official ruling was accidental drowning, with her bipolar disorder listed as a significant factor. The theory is she climbed to the roof during a manic or psychotic episode, somehow got into the tank and couldn't get out. But watch that elevator footage yourself. Watch how she moves. Watch how she reacts to something we can't see. And ask yourself, what was Elisa Lam running from? April 11th, 1981. Keddie, California, a small resort town in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Sue Sharp, a single mother, lived in cabin 28 with her 5 children. They'd only been there a few months, trying to start fresh after Sue's divorce. That night, Sue's 14-year-old daughter Sheila stayed overnight at a neighbor's cabin. The rest of the family went to bed. Sue, her 4 other children, and her son John's friend Donna, who was sleeping over. The next morning, April 12th, Sheila returned home around 8 a.m. What she found in the living room would haunt her for the rest of her life. Her mother Sue, her 15-year-old brother John, and his friend Dana were dead. They'd been bound with electrical cord and medical tape. The violence was extreme. They'd been beaten with a hammer and stabbed with kitchen knives. This wasn't quick. This was prolonged, brutal, and personal. But here's what doesn't make sense. Sheila's 12-year-old sister Tina was missing, and her 2 younger brothers, ages 12 and 10, were found alive in the adjacent bedroom. They'd slept through everything. Think about that. In a small cabin, 3 people were murdered violently over what must have been at least an hour. The sounds, the struggle, the chaos. And 2 children in the next room heard nothing. They woke up the next morning with no idea what had happened 10 feet away. How is that possible? Tina wasn't in the cabin. There was no sign of her. Had she been kidnapped? Was she hiding? Did she run? 3 years passed. 3 years of searching, of wondering, of hoping she was somehow still alive. In April 1984, a man searching for bottles in the woods, about 50 miles from Keddie, found a skull. It was Tina. She'd been there the whole time, just never found. But here's where this case gets even darker. The police investigation was a disaster, and evidence suggests it might have been intentional. Investigators had suspects almost immediately. One was a local man with violent tendencies who'd been seen near the cabin. His friend, a convicted felon, was also suspected. There were witnesses who saw them. There was evidence, but they were never arrested, never formally charged. Why? Years later, it came out that one of the main suspects had connections to the local sheriff's department. Evidence went missing from the files. Key pieces just vanished. Witnesses who came forward were ignored or dismissed. The lead detective even took case files home and kept them for decades. This wasn't incompetence. This was obstruction. In 2016, 35 years after the murders, someone was finally arrested based on DNA evidence found on tape used to bind the victims. A man who'd been living in Keddie at the time, a man who'd been looked at early in the investigation. But by then, most of the original suspects were dead. Justice came too late for Sue Sharp and her children. Too late for Dana, who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So many questions remain. Who had the power to shut down this investigation? What connections protected these killers for decades? Why was evidence destroyed, and how, in a tiny cabin, did 2 children sleep through hours of violence happening in the next room? Someone got away with this for over 3 decades. The arrest in 2016 might have brought some closure, but it doesn't answer everything. Cabin 28 was demolished years ago, but in Keddie, people still remember the night a family was slaughtered while the world slept.